Hello, and welcome to the most excellent 80s movies podcast. It's the podcast where a filmmaker, a comedian, and their fabulous guests adventure through the labyrinth to find the movies at the center of the Goblin City of the 80s to, re examine the ones that we love or might have missed with, these are modern 2022 eyes. And today we are watching Labyrinth, or we already watched it. We're talking about Labyrinth, a movie selection from 1986.
TriStar Pictures announces the collaboration of three extraordinary talents. Jim Henson, creator of The Muppets and Dark Crystal.
Where you go with a head like that?
George Lucas, creator of the Star Wars saga. And one of the most innovative forces in modern entertainment, David Bowie. Together, they will take you into a dazzling world of fantasy and adventure.
There's nothing to be afraid of.
A world where anything seems possible, and nothing is what it seems.
Everything I've done for you. I move the stars of no one. Run so long, run so far.
The world of Labyrinth.
Where do you, they find it really curious how they chose to present it as like, here are the people who helped to make it, especially David Bowie. Like, instead of like showing us what the movie is about. I mean, it's kind of weird, right?
Granted, as someone who was born in the 80s and therefore, not like old enough to understand the reasoning, but there's a part of me that thinks that like maybe it was experimental enough that they were like, well, what's a guaranteed bringer?
Yeah.
David Bowie.
We better tell him George Lucas was involved. Otherwise they might freak out.
This also comes after the Dark Crystal, which was kind of deemed a little weird by a lot of people too.
I was talking to my fiance last night about, because we watched it together last night. I was like, wait, so Dark Crystal came after this, right? But apparently not.
Well, if you are totally new to the podcast and have no idea who these voices are, well, one of them you shouldn't know unless you're some sort of psychic. But of course, we have Nathan Blackwell, filmmaker. Was I supposed to say something else? Sorry, I stopped.
Hello.
And joining us today is a very special guest, a comedian, improviser, sketch comedy, commedia dell'arte, all around theater and comedy person, Valerie.
Hello.
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 Hello. We're so excited to have you. Let's just right at the beginning before we jump in. Tell us about some of the things that you have done and are doing at like Pack Theater and Rise Theater and all over LA and Denver.
Okay. Cool beans. Well, in LA, I was on a sketch comedy team at the Pack called Moonshot. We did shows every month. So like I would produce a lot of people's sketches. I was the wrangler, the chief human wrangler.
An important job, as Nathan can testify to.
Oh yeah. Like wrangling peeps is just so undervalued. Well, I can do that, and then I'm like, cool, man. Here you go. Here's like 50 million plates. Go spin them all. Why don't you?
Yep.
No, and in another one of my things that I love to talk about in LA, I ran an after school theater program for kids at a long-term domestic violence shelter We did that for 3 years. We called ourselves the Rogue Theater Squad, and what we did is we went to this shelter, and we would spend the first of the fall semester teaching these kids improv and storytelling stuff, so we could just get them to play and build trust with each other and trust each other's choices as well as their own. And then the spring semester, we would get them to write and put up their own original 15-minute play. And it was challenging work. It was rewarding work. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. So that's like, if I were to get hit by a snowmobile like right after the podcast, that is like the number one thing I want on my obit.
Yeah.
As well as
Okay.
doting cat mom.
Of course.
And then in Denver, I just moved to Denver, but I'm getting involved in the theater scene. I'm figuring out where everything is. But I did a Commedia play for the holidays, and I'm coaching a sketch team at Rise Comedy. So yeah,
So exciting. Like truly have stuck your finger into every artistic pie. So that's very cool. And we're
and
so
I
glad
promise
to
I'll wash my hands before I do it.
So usually at the top we like describe everybody's like experience with this movie. Of course, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but this movie to me was one of the big ones and was also very important to both my kids in their youths. Um but Nathan, I think this could go either way for you. I think that you could either have loved this movie because of maybe the George Lucasness of it, or you could have like totally avoided it as being a silly thing.
No, well, it turns out it's the middle ground. Like,
Okay.
so to me, this was always a Jim Henson movie. There wasn't much. I mean, there was some touch on the whole George Lucas thing, but he didn't even do like any press for it. And so, because he didn't want to steal the limelight from Jim.
Yeah.
And so no, but it was definitely something like I enjoy. I really enjoyed the Muppets, and the stuff like that Jim Henson did, and so it was a movie I remember seeing in theaters, and I do remember seeing later on VHS and things like that. But it was never an obsession. It was like one of those movies I would rewatch just as opportunity came up.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't in like the family rotation.
I see. And Valerie was seeing this movie for the very first time.
Oh my goodness.
I know. It's a shocker. I know someone who's into like commedia and puppets, and everyone's like, "What? You haven't seen this movie?" No, I knew enough pop culture references to get me by on pretending I saw it. So
Yeah, that's a big one. If you just know David Bowie's in it, that's probably like all you really
well,
need.
it's you gotta know David Bowie and Dance Magic Dance. That's all you gotta know, and you can get through it. You can get through like a conversation.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you remind me of the Babe. Okay, so like any initial thoughts as a first time viewer, Valerie? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it weird? What do you think?
It was weird, but it was like 80s weird.
Right.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I was talking to my fiance about it. There were like moments when we were like, well, I know that the emphasis was on, like the puppets and the characters. And there were moments where, as far as like on a writing level, I was like, I wish that they had like gone just a little bit deeper, just because, like with David Bowie and Sarah, or I guess Jareth and Sarah, I was like, so is Jareth like, is he hitting on her? It's not entirely clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I just chalked it up to 80s writing, but
Yeah.
but I wanted more clarity there.
Yeah. And this movie went through like a lot of I know so many facts about this movie. It's like I didn't even rewatch it. I was just like I know this whole movie backwards and forwards. And we went through a lot of writing. It was do you remember which one, Nathan? But someone from Monty Python was
Terry Jones.
Oh yes, thank you. Was the original writer, and then it got passed around and passed around and passed around. But yeah, it is very ambiguous of what David Bowie's intentions are, what Jareth's motivation is in this situation. And it's not until like many, many, many watches where you even have the opportunity to notice that when we're panning around Sarah's room, um, you can see newspaper clippings of her mother, who was an actress, and her mother's leading man, who is David Bowie. And the story sort of tells you that the mom ran away with this David Bowie actor.
Mhm.
So, in Sarah's labyrinth of her mindscape, like that would be who she would like sort of identify or characterize as this like mercurial man. um
Yeah, both a threat, but yet also, a bit seductive or appealing, you know?
yeah, and she's, I think a lot of the story is like she's at that age where it's like things aren't necessarily overtly or intentionally like sexualized, but there's like a little bit of like a simmering undercurrent of like,
Mhm.
is this what I'm into, kind of a
Yeah,
thing.
it is definitely a coming of age movie that, it's something that we don't get to see a lot of, which is a female coming of age movie set in kind of an adventure. And
Hmm.
so you not only have like the version of like, oh, the childhood playthings that that I still am attached to and can't get rid of, but yet being drawn to a man with tight pants,
Oh, they are
you know?
so tight.
It's like, we watch some of these movies, it's like, "Oh my gosh, that like such and such's cleavage probably propelled like a whole generation of young men into puberty," and
Right.
and that's exactly what I thought for the young girls with with Jareth.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I don't know if you wish to expound upon that, but
Oh yeah, anybody who's really into Renaissance festivals had some sort of experience with this movie. Yeah, because he's David Bowie. He is like sexy and
Mhm.
appealing, but also like completely otherworldly.
Yeah, Jareth, I know I don't think that they reached there's like I heard that, they had considered a lot of other people like Michael Jackson or Prince or people for this role. I don't think they ever reached out to them.
Hmm.
I think but just thinking about it, like there's not Jareth, David Bowie's character has to be both fun and funny, but yet attractive and dangerous. He
Hmm.
has to be all those things. And all the people that they considered, I think only other person who maybe could have done it was Sting.
Oh, you know what, Nathan? Ding, ding, ding. You're right. I would have
Yeah.
accepted Sting,
Yeah,
but I
because
wouldn't have liked it as much.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I don't think anyone could have replaced David Bowie with that way that they were going with, which is a rock star.
Hmm.
I think they could have done it, you know, because I heard that they didn't get him until 2 months before shooting.
That's
Uh,
right.
and so I think the only other way to have gone, which is to pick an actor who could sing rather than the rock star route.
Hmm. And I don't know, like, we don't always talk about like, oh, could you remake this? Could you redo it? But I don't know of anyone who would have that unless you did that thing, which I love it if they are going to redo something, if they are going to remake it. Like I would want to keep Sarah, the main character, as a young girl, but maybe there's like a Billie Eilish in the Jareth role, and it's even more confusing. That it's like you not only is it this like dangerous, sexy, menacing thing, but it's like, oh, I'm also confused as to like, is there a gender identity? I don't know.
Hmm.
But of course, this is the story of Sarah, who is like introducing Jennifer Connelly. Um, we first meet her, and she's just like out in a field in a Renaissance costume, reciting lines to a play called The Labyrinth. Um, And it's a very 80s opening sequence where she's like just hanging out with her dog, and she's like, "Oh no, it's late and we have to get home for babysitting. Saxophone, saxophone, saxophone. She runs home to where her stepmother is like ready to yell at her.
Yeah.
Of
And
course.
and rewatching this, like, I much more side with the parents. It's like, just crazy, chaotic teenager. Just slow your roll, okay?
And she said, like, the stepmom is like, I would love it if you had a date. You should have dates, but you don't have a date. So can you babysit?
Right. Yeah, that was Jennifer Connelly's character, Sarah. She was at this ambiguous age where she she is like she's encouraged to go on dates, and yet like she has her toys and she's very possessive of her toys. Uh and then she whines and about like how she has so much responsibility, even though she's allowed to go in the park all day.
Yeah. She was tired from a day of housework and burned by the harsh words of her stepmother. And it's like, really? Did you do housework before you went
Right.
to the park?
Things are so terrible in my 2-story, 5-bedroom home.
Yeah. In a beautiful part of we don't know where in America, but like clearly is very nice. And like, of course, it makes sense for her to have like some resentment for the new stepmom, the new baby, and like obviously her dad is just a wet noodle because he's like, is that the expression, a wet noodle or wet blanket? Like he's just seems very passive.
I'll accept both.
Okay.
I like to use noodle, but that's just my personal preference.
Okay. Because he's just like, Sarah, we're gonna go, I guess, if you're all right, bye.
Oh yeah, my favorite was like, let me talk to her. And he talks to her through a door. Like that was supposed to be like, in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna have that like daddy daughter, like wink wink, nudge nudge, I'm secretly on your side. And instead he just talks to her through the door. And
he
like,
says nothing. He's like, we gotta go.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the big talk. Hey honey, we're leaving.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that like, of course, an adult's point of view is like, yeah, of course she has some sort of like arrested development situation if her mom left their family, like, and now she has this stepmother. Of course, she's trying to like stay in that place of like childhood where she can pretend and such. So, unknowing, she's a terrible babysitter. Also, like, she's just leaving Toby to his own devices as she's like flopping around her room being mad. And she unwittingly summons the goblins to take her brother away, because this play that she's been reading, this story that she is telling herself, is that there's a king of goblins and he's fallen in love with the girl and given her certain powers that if she says her right words, they'll take him away to the goblin city and he'll become a goblin. And then that's sort of the crux of the movie, is like her brother gets stolen by goblins. Does she want to get him back? They'll forget about the baby. No, she has 13 hours to solve the labyrinth, get her brother back, and learn that life isn't fair, but you just got to deal with it. Right?
Yeah. This is the part I wish was just a little, in terms of writing, that I had, I guess a little issue with, was that it just seemed like she didn't, there wasn't like the cycle of like realizing she did something wrong, the regret, protesting, struggling with taking on the quest. It was basically, as soon as Jareth shows up, she goes like, I need my baby brother back. Give it to me. Like we didn't follow her on the kind of like emotional transition of then really needing to go save him. It was almost kind of like assumed, oh yes, of course I must go save him. And now I'm on the quest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do appreciate, for the sake of brevity, because this, was this movie for kids, by the way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if
teenagers,
okay, because for the sake of brevity, I do appreciate how quickly she just accepted that this was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like, okay, we have 90 minutes, right? We have 90 minutes to get this film out, and she's like, here, my magic words, and yep, there's a David Bowie Goblin King in front of me saying your magic words worked, and she was like, oh damn,
Oopsie doopsie.
whoops, one back. So like but I agree, for the sake of like for character arc, I do wish there was more of that, but also for the sake of just like launching into, because like like for the sake of like the teenagers slash kids this movie was geared towards, obviously, like get to the labyrinth faster.
Yeah. Get in that labyrinth. Get in it. But also like the brother is just the thing that's going to force her to keep going in the labyrinth. Like she's in the labyrinth for for her own reasons. It's just the baby is like this she doesn't even like at the end when she solves the labyrinth like scoop him up,
Mhm.
she just falls on her own. So the baby is a real nothing baby. Come on, baby, be more valuable. Make us want you more. No.
Yeah, I felt like we were missing a lot of emotional connection between her and the baby,
Oh yeah.
and the motivation. She's put in a situation where it's like, of course she must go on the quest, and of course we must face a bunch of ridiculous fun things, But
Yeah.
in terms of us like feeling her need and kind of being in her footsteps, it was very kind of perfunctory.
Yeah. And I think that like as she goes through the labyrinth, and we do go from like one situation to the next, one complication of the labyrinth to the next, the like two main lessons that she's going to keep learning are, number one, you can't take things for granted. You have to sort of ask questions and investigate things, be curious about things rather than be making assumptions and taking things for granted. And that nothing is fair. The labyrinth isn't fair. Life isn't fair. And you either deal with it and carry on, or you sit down and sulk about it, right? Because nothing in the labyrinth is fair, or like it's not like a meritocracy in there. It's just you do what you do. You solve the riddles or you don't. And of course, the people making her solve those riddles are adorable puppets. The first one we meet, we meet Hoggle, and we kill a bunch of fairies, and he's like right there, like, don't assume fairies are nice. These fairies are real assholes, and he's poisoning them. What did you think of the character Hoggle, Valerie?
I love the running gag that no one ever gets his name right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I love that he's a coward. Like, he's an unashamed coward. He's just that's who I am.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I love that he, like he basically is his allegiances go to the highest bidder.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I appreciate that. For a kids movie, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yep. He both sells Sarah out and feels bad about it. But like that puppet was like a super, super complicated puppet. There were like, I think like way more than the usual amount of people puppeting it. Like there was someone like just controlling the upper lip, just controlling the bottom lip, just controlling the eyebrows. Like it was a crazy complicated puppet.
Oh really?
And
I thought this whole time, I was like, oh, there must have been someone in the suit.
There was someone in the suit, but the head was operated by gloves.
Wow.
Yeah. And then famously, or perhaps not famously, but famously to me, the Hoggle puppet got lost in the air in a plane and ended up at the Albuquerque airport, where it was never claimed, and no one knows what has happened to it. It got thrown away. So that's fun. And then, she meets all these other little puppets. There's a little worm who's like a fan favorite. The part that always obsesses me is when she meets the two people who block the door, and who are like, you have to answer a riddle. Would he, one of us always tells the truth and one of us always lies. So how do you figure out which door leads to the center of the labyrinth and which one leads to Bum. Certain death. Like, I always figure, like, oh, I need to know how to solve that riddle because it's gonna come up.
Why couldn't she, ask an arguable fact,
Hmm.
right? Like, are you standing on the ground?
And if they tell the truth, then they're the truth guy. That's
Well,
that's
you
smart.
have to ask both of them. You have to ask both of them, and then the one who's lying is like, no,
Well, but that's the thing, right? You only get to ask one question.
right? And can you ask it to both of them?
No, I think he says like you can only ask one of us.
Oh, I didn't catch that part.
Yeah, and so it's like you only get one question of one of them, and then you have to ask would that one tell me that it's true? And then if they say yes or no, then you know whether or not the other one, like, see what I mean? It's like it's complicated, and I'm like, I'm not sure that if I was presented to that situation, I would remember. And you don't immediately know because she ends up in the oubliette, right?
Yeah.
Even though I think she got it right. Right?
Yeah.
No?
I
No,
mean,
I think she did get it. Yeah, she got it right as far as I remember. I
Because
remember
Well, because
when
yeah,
I
she
saw it.
didn't land in certain death. She just landed in an oubliette.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so like Jareth is popping up all over the place to sort of like thwart her and hope that she will give up by making it complicated for her. And of course, every time they interact, she's like, it's a piece of cake. Like, I'm going to be a sassy teenager. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, then let's make it much harder for you. Which is such a teenager thing. As the mother of a soon-to-be 16-year-old, like, be like, are you okay? How's the labyrinth going? It's fine. It's fine. It's a piece of cake. Okay. All right, cool. Well, then you don't need 13 hours, do you? What do you guys think of the puppets? Like there's so many puppets. Like eventually she meets Ludo, the big monster, and Sir Didymus, the little dog that rides a dog, and we see a plethora of goblins, and there's of course the chili down fire monsters. And the guy whose head is a hat. Like, there's so many puppets. What do we love them? Do we hate them? Are they scary? What do we think?
I love them.
Yeah, I agree. All of them except the ones that take off their limbs and heads, which are gross and nightmare fuel.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
everyone else, it is, yeah, it's just, it's that great kind of Muppet characters. The thing that's fun about this movie is that all the obstacles are characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a door, it's not just spikes, it's even the bog has personality,
Oh,
you
yes,
know.
it does. The bog of eternal stench.
Oh, dude, when it
Yeah.
just makes fart noises.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of these obstacles, the doors, all of it, have these fun, charming personalities. Even like the big mechanized thing of blades coming to kill them, and then they sneak, they evade it, and then you see behind it a bunch of like small little goblins on a bicycle moving the machine.
Mm-hmm.
All of it has that wonderful kind of Jim Henson charm.
Right. That it's menacing, but it's also sweet and funny,
Yeah,
right?
and it's tough because some of these puppets just border on the edge of grossness, and and it's tough to thread that needle of keeping the playful charm of them and avoiding the grossness, which I really enjoy
Who was
Dark
a gross
Crystal,
puppet
but
for you?
well, I think that the imps were pretty terrible. The
They take
red dancing
their flaming
creatures.
their heads
Yeah.
off. Chill you
Yeah.
down with your problems.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like Hoggle is a little disgusting, but he's still charming and lovable, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I think some of the characters, like I really enjoyed Dark Crystal, but I do think some of the characters in there were maybe a touch gross. Some of them.
I don't like Askexis. I don't like Dark Crystal.
I know I like those guys, but yeah, there's some of the ones that are maybe it's that they're a touch more human come off as well. Maybe that's not true, because then kind of like the wise man with the talking bird hat was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but yeah, most of the characters in this are really wonderful. Like the tiny little British worm,
Mm-hmm.
like
Hello. Come on inside. Have a spot of tea and meet the missus. Which I think his lesson at the very beginning is like, oh, don't go that way. Never go that way. And then as soon as she leaves, if she'd have gone that way, she'd have gone straight to the castle. It's like, well, maybe ask why. Ask a question. Be curious. Don't assume. Um, what were your favorite puppets, Val?
My favorite puppets were okay. I'm gonna. They do count as puppets, by the way. The hands.
Oh, we're helping hands. Yeah.
Dude, that was like that's like theater magic, right? Like
Uh-huh.
that's the kind of stuff that like, oh man, that gets me like so jazzed because that's like
jazz hands.
it literally that's like my studies. That's like all I like. How do I take like nothing and turn it into something? Here's a bunch of hands. Here's
Mhm.
like 3 people. How do you make a complete character? So the hands were my favorite for sure. The the worm.
So cute. He's so cute.
The worm was real cute. And actually, Didymus was really funny.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love
Didymus has got to be my favorite.
Oh, I love Didymus, but I love Ludo. Like Ludo is so sweet, and like he's the gentle beast. But I also love like the part where they're going past all the rocks that are like beware, and he's like, you
Oh
don't have to
yeah.
do that for us. He's like, well, but I haven't done it for such a long time. Okay, but don't respect a big reaction. It's like, no. Beware, for the path will lead to certain destruction. I was like, I felt for that rock guy who was like, oh, I haven't said it in so long.
Yeah, there is a theme of kind of like isolated, lonely people, you
Yeah.
know?
And then the knockers too are like,
Yeah, everyone is kind of stuck in their lot, you know?
yeah. But they're all great. I think they're so like each charming and sweet. And like, did you guys notice like that almost all of them are in her room? When we do get to pan around her room, Sir Didymus is there. Her own dog is Ambrosius. You see Ludo. You see the fire imps. You see basically an analogous version of everybody.
So basically it's a total psychotic break, or a like Total Recall before Total Recall. Like they're trying to have like, okay, it is a magical experience, but maybe it's just in her head.
Yeah.
Well, more like a Wizard of Oz, though, right?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe?
no, right when well, because like the fire people doll, right? That's like that was the most prominent thing I noticed.
Yeah.
It's like right there.
Yep.
And then like and then they and obviously Merlin, who turns up as Ambrosius, and like so yeah, like when I I was like, man, is this all happening in her head? That was I also had Wizard of Oz vibes.
Yeah, but like she doesn't like hit her head. She like just
has a temper
as far as we
tantrum.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, is it real? Is it fake? Obviously, we're meant to believe that it's in her imagination or in her dream or something like that, because it is all there in her room, including the explanation of who David Bowie is and so on. But there are all these different parts of the labyrinth. There's all these different pieces of the labyrinth. Like, it gets more and more dangerous as you go. And there's also like there's music. So let's talk about the music. What do we think of the songs? Obviously, Magic Dance is probably the most famous song, where all the goblins are like running around and singing. Then you've got 2 like breakaway hits by David Bowie. Underground, which plays at the beginning and the end. Oh, by the way, another fun fact, the digital owl at the beginning is the first fully digitized creature ever to appear in a movie.
Well, first digital animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before that was young Sherlock. See, they're at this point they're really kind of like staking their claim, like like so before it was like the first digital like human or character was like young Sherlock Holmes. But then like 4 years before that was Tron, which is like the
Mm-hmm.
first digital like hour and a half movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was the first owl, Nathan. Okay.
Right.
And
See, I was gonna ask, if that owl, because I was like, wow, that's a pretty decent owl, and I was like, is this? Because I saw it on Netflix, so I was like, is this one of those things where like George Lucas went in and like
redid
redigitized?
it. Nope, that was real. That was they put some money into that.
Wow.
The song that he sings it when they're at the ball, when she's in her like masquerade attire, um is As the World Falls Down, had its own music video, which was basically that scene from Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Fire Guys sing the Chili Down song. Did we love it? Did we hate it? What do we think?
I mean, they're super catchy, but they do kind of like ride that line of kind of being about adult stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Her eyes can be so cruel, just as I can be so cruel.
For me, they were less bops and more very specifically movie songs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very David Bowie songs, like they're ambiguous.
Hmm.
And even like at the very end where she's confronting him, he's like, all I ask is that you love me, fear me, bow down before me, and then I will be your slave. And it's like, what are you talking about? What are you even talking about?
Yeah, let's
Sounds
parse
like
that apart.
you've got a lot of needs, it sounds like.
He has to run a whole labyrinth. I mean, it can't be easy being
Mhm.
the only human.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at him hang out, with all the goblins. He's obviously on a different social like level than they are.
Mm-hmm.
He just must get so bored. Does he have other friends like the people at the ball? Do they even exist?
Do they? I don't know. Is that a dream within a dream?
But like, okay, I want to go back now. So,
Okay.
so at the final confrontation, right? All I ask is for you to like worship me, adore me, love me, and I'm like, nah, man, you just told her to go back. You told her to go back to her toys and forget
Mm-hmm.
about
Hmm.
Toby. And now here you are in the final confrontation, and you're like, change my mind. I want you to be my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like this is the part where this is where I was saying in the beginning where I was like, man, the writing where I wish the writing was a little bit more like clear. And I know it went through like a bajillion rewrites, so that's probably what ended up happening. But bummer.
Yeah, like someone wanted it to be more of a romance, and someone was like, "No, that's weird. We should really back off on the romance." And it landed somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
Yeah, well, because again, he's like, go back to your toys, forget about him. I did everything you wanted, and then when she's in the labyrinth, he's like, I'm sending her back home. I want her to go home and forget. Your job, Hoggle, is to like get her to forget and give up and go home. And then when she doesn't give up and go home, like, was it like secretly all this time? Ooh, it was a test to prove whether or not she was worthy of him. I don't know, but that could have been more clear.
Hmm.
Yeah, but no, for sure. But I definitely feel like I've seen this movie too many times to like see the obvious bits that are like, wait, what? That's
Hmm.
weird. That's not okay. Um so, feel free to point out anything that's and I know it's a little inappropriate at times. Like he wears a cod piece that borders on obscene. But what are we gonna do? Like, it's the 80s, it's David Bowie. What are we gonna do?
I mean, can I say, like, I went to the Jim Henson exhibit in LA, so and it had the costumes, the two costumes. It had her
Mhm.
ball gown and it had his ball gown costume, and like, man, that cod piece. I'm like, let's pay attention to it. I guess can't
It's a
not pay
lot.
attention to it.
Which it's hard to say that there's no intent for it to be like a little sexy when it's like, are we all seeing this? We're all seeing this. Right? There's also like there's a lot of hidden David Bowie faces in the Labyrinth. There's like one really obvious one that's like, you know, the rocks when you move in a right way look like him, but there's also
Yeah.
there's 7 hidden ones.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, how did you feel about this movie aside from it being like somewhat confusing, Valerie? Like, were you like, "Oh, I love it. I see myself as a Sarah," or were you like, "Nope, I missed it. It missed me."
um, well, as far as any messaging like that, it definitely missed me.
Uh-huh.
Um, because well, I will say, okay, I think the big lesson line that I really appreciated was you know, when David Bowie, when Jareth like turned the clocks and she goes, "That's not fair." And he goes, "You sure do love to use that phrase. Do you have
Mhm.
anything to compare it to? Or
Mhm.
like compare fairness against or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, you tell her, Jareth."
Yeah.
uh that was like my favorite like lesson learned line, but the rest of it was missed just because, you know, Nate was saying, it just went so quickly. There was just no emotional connection to her goal. Like in my mind I was like, oh, she has to get the baby back because otherwise her stepmom is gonna kill her.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like there was no like, actually I do feel really bad about this.
Yeah, she never really had a relationship with the kid, you know.
Mhm.
This movie is made up of like a bunch of really great moments. Like they're great like clips that you'd watch on YouTube or you would remember as a child. Like that is a classic defining moment from a movie I love. But the whole thing as an arc definitely has, it's not as strong as I was hoping it would be on revisiting it, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just in terms of like what she wanted, you know, how, you know, how badly she wanted it, and then how everything just kind of comes together, you know, like with the meaning, you know, like what's the ultimate moment you know, that is it that she, you know, the connection of that you have no power over me, and the fact that maybe he and these other things represent something, but that whatever it represents or the metaphors are not really clear.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, that's another one too where she, you know, she's trying to get that line down, and in my mind I'm like, okay, so since her words have power, right? Cuz she accidentally said the magic words that got the baby taken away. I'm like, okay, cool. So since her words have power, all she's got to do is say the magic words that she cannot remember. So I'm like, "Oh yeah, so this is how it all ties together. She's going to remember the words." And instead of remembering the words, she says a completely different phrase that comes out of left field that has never been uttered before in the entire movie, which is, "You have no power over me."
Nope, that's the
And
line. She says it at the beginning.
wait, she does?
Yep. She says, "I can never remember that line. You have no power over me." That's the line that she forgets.
Oh, whoops.
But no, it's totally easy to miss.
I
You know,
rescind all of that. You can cut that out in
no,
post.
no, she's doing a completely different monologue. You know, she says a little bit of it through Dangers Untold and Hardships Unnumbered, but then she's like, "Give me back the child," right? So it's different, but she's like, "Oh, I always forget that line. You have no power over me." But so, like, you're not
Mhm.
wrong.
That's like the punchiest part of the whole thing. Why would she remember that part?
Well,
Um,
yeah, because I thought "Give me the child" was the line that she keeps forgetting. So
mhm.
whoops.
No, no, no. Like that's a complete look. You know, your read on it is as valid as anything because, you know, if they can't get it across to you in one viewing, like, you know, I don't think any movie should assume you're going to go back and watch it over and over and over again. It's
Mhm.
lovely when there are little like Easter eggs, I guess is what we call them now, but you shouldn't have to, you know, understand all that. So like, yeah, I mean, and I think that it is definitely one of those movies that's completely steeped in the tea of like, yeah, no, I saw this movie so many times when I was like very young girl that to me it's like, yeah, you have no power over me. That's the magic words. And like, and especially the
Mhm.
moment where she's like saying she ends up at a junk pile where there are all these like goblin women who are like carrying these giant trash piles on their back, like snails, kind of like, um like they've got all of their little treasures on their back, and that trash monster like is telling her like, no, you can't, you need to go home and keep all your toys. Like, these toys are valuable, these items are valuable, these things are what have value. And she has to sort of realize it's not the things that have value, it's my brother. But it's more like, kind of,
Right, when she goes, it's just stuff.
yeah, I have to save Toby, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's because, again, she finds the book and says the line.
Yep. And there's another moment where she's oh shoot, it got away from me now. There's where at the end, even after she's like saved Toby and like everything's fine, where she looks in the mirror and sees them all, and they're like, if you should you need us, we'll be here for you. And she's like, yeah, I've gone through my labyrinth, I've grown up, he has no power over me, like this stuff has no power over me, but from time to time, I'll need you in my life. These sort of childish things, these imaginative moments. And then they all have a dance party.
Yeah.
I like that part. And like, I think there's sort of possibly a layer. And again, they do not tell you this in the writing, where it's like, if we know that her mom is like meant to have run off with this David Bowie person, then maybe that's what she's sort of having to go on this journey of like, nope, this is what your life is now. There's a little brother, there's a stepmom, and your mom and all of that stuff. Like, that's what has no power over you. You have to sort of deal with reality.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I don't know. Do you think like this would be something that could do for a reimagining?
Yeah, I would do it as, I mean, as I'm sure most of these people are thinking, as like a mini series. Like, I would do a season, like a 6-part, um, of traveling through the labyrinth.
Yeah. Really give
Because
each
it feels like
element.
there's a lot. Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, the concept is so fun. The idea of having to navigate this labyrinth, which is so dense and so complicated and so difficult to traverse. All the little pockets of weird people and civilization and things like that existed. It's just very fertile ground.
Right. Yeah, agree.
But you still want them to get to the end of something, and so that's why I wouldn't do it as a series. I would do it as sort of like a mini series.
A limited series.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think, Valerie?
No, I agree. I didn't even I totally forgot the concept of limited series exists. So I was like, oh yeah, it could totally be remade. It would just have to be done, in the way movies are done now, which is like 2.5 hours. Well,
Yeah.
but I don't think it could be redone as the 90-minute, format it was done in, just because, again, like, we've all kind of agreed here that there were some emotional stakes that were missing, some little like hidden gems, like, Sarah's mom running off with a David Bowie type. Like, all of that would have been really lovely to have seen. And again, like, for me, my first watching is as a 33-year-old. I wonder what my impression would have been had I seen this as a kid, right? I'm sure it would have been like super. I'm sure I would have been like, wow, those puppets are scary. But instead, I'm like, yeah, I fucking love those puppets. But man, I wish Sarah really cared about that baby.
Yeah.
So now as an adult, when I'm like, in the reimagining of it, I'm like, yeah, this could do with some like longevity. So like, yeah, as a mini series or as a limited series, like, like the worm could have its own little thing. Like, maybe there's like a whole world of wall worms.
Yay!
She has to crawl into a tiny home.
Well, yeah, that's straight out of Never Ending Story, right? Where he goes into the place with the little people and like suddenly fits. Yeah, I would love that. And I think you are absolutely right. They need to like define the emotional stakes a bit more.
Yeah.
And of course, if it were to be remade, it would be somehow grittier.
I don't know. I think there's an expectation with like Henson materials that they've got to like live just kind of like the new Dark Crystal series, that they've got to kind of like live up to the style of it.
That's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say. I was like, didn't they try to make the Dark Crystal one like grittier and darker
Probably.
or something?
Yeah, I didn't watch it because the Skeksis, they do scare me. Like like giant vulture monsters, I'm not into it. And I think the fire monsters in this one are just on this side of being fluffy enough. Like they're furry enough and not skin. It's like skin on the Skeksis, and I don't like them. But yeah, they did a series for Dark Crystal, so where's my Labyrinth series? I want Billie Eilish to be in it. So like on a scale of
Oh, I was gonna pitch, by the way. I was gonna
Oh, please. Oh, please
pitch
do.
Lil Nas X.
Oh, genius. Genius. What about you, Nathan? Do you have any thoughts?
No.
Okay. A very Nathan response. Thank you. No, perfect idea, Valerie. I love that because yeah, he would have that like ambiguous magic.
Yeah. Or if you were going for like older rock star, I was gonna say, I was like, if you wanted someone like more of the times for the children's, I'd say Billie Eilish or Lil Nas X are great choices. But if you wanted like rock star vibes, I was gonna say Lady Gaga.
Oh yeah, she would also be amazing. She could just wear the exact same costume and hair and makeup too and be perfection. Or I mean, I think Sting could still do it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Still, although that might bring in a whole lot of other questions about the age difference and
Yeah,
stuff.
well, I was also gonna say, if you bring in Sting, then like you might as well just bring in Jennifer Connelly, just because like then the series would not be geared towards a newer generation; it'd be geared towards us.
You know what? Okay, here's a pitch. Jennifer Connelly is an adult now and has a baby of her own. And life is hard. Things have not turned out the way that she thought they would. And so she has to go back into the labyrinth to fight for her own baby and see and
Did
like
she wish her own baby away?
I mean, look, as a parent.
That would be great. Yeah,
sometimes.
well, I think the most realistic thing is she wishes her teenager away.
Oh my God, yes. And she has to go find her own teenage daughter in the labyrinth. Oh my God, Nathan, you have to make this movie because the teenage daughter would be like, no, I'm going to go my own way. You can't tell me what to do, doors, right?
Yeah, she'll be like the Sting will be like, I'm going to turn you into a goblin. She's like, cool. Maybe that's what I wanted all along.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have to get a job. Fine, I'll be a goblin. And there's Jennifer Connelly being like, I've solved this labyrinth before. I've been through all of this before. Like, let me help you. Let me guide you. And the daughter's being like, no. And then Lady Gaga is always turning up and being like, Mwahaha. I love this. And even Jareth, Jareth could appear as like different people to both of them at different times, right? So like maybe for her it's Sting, but for the daughter it's Lady Gaga and Lil Nas X and Billie Eilish all at different times. Yeah, I love this idea. I think we should make it right away. Pitch it. Can you like get on the horn to Jim Henson there, Nathan? Do you have those get the company on the line and or Lucas?
I'll send an email.
Something?
I'll send an email.
Okay, thank you. So on a scale of 1 fuzzy wallworm to 10 fuzzy wallworms, how many fuzzy wallworms would you give this movie? And let's start with Nathan, then we'll do Valerie, then we'll do me.
Okay. This is a tough one because again, there's so many wonderful moments, but I've got to kind of judge it based off of the whole experience. I'm gonna give it, I think, a 7. And
so you don't think this is better than Mannequin? No, I'm kidding, Nathan. Say your thing. I'm just coming for you.
Yeah. So just like I mean, I could totally get pushed into a 7.5 for sure. Not a problem.
Okay, good.
But yeah, that's kind of maybe it's a 7.4. Let's give it a 7.4.
Okay. I don't
7.47. But yeah, just in terms of like, doesn't all work. There's so much that is wonderful in there, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm landing.
Love it. What do you think?
Damn it!
Are you damning that I got a whole almost half a point out of you?
No. I want to give it an 8. I want to give it a 9, but
Nope,
yeah.
don't worry. I'll make up
Them's
for
the
it.
feelings.
Yep. I love it. What do you think, Valerie?
I am a I was gonna say like 6 point something wall worms, but then I was like, no, because the wall worms they have to be whole and complete.
Yeah, they
That's
do.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not fair for to the wall worms to chop them in half. And so anyway, I'm gonna give it a solid 7 wall worms, because I
Woo!
love the puppets and the costumes. And those 3 wall worms that are being taken away, it's because of the writing.
Okay, that's fair. Both very, very well and truly evaluated in all of the logical and meaningful ways. I give this movie 10. A 10 wall worms out of 10 wall worms. I love it. And it is obviously, a lens of nostalgia that I can't break through. But I relate more, like, so if you take this as a 16-year-old girl, which she is supposed to be 16, and then you compare it to 16 Candles, like, I'd rather live in this world of like goblins and David Bowie's than like the world of Jake Ryan's and
Mm-hmm.
that situation. So I give it a 10. I love it, but I understand that it doesn't necessarily hold up in those ways. Excellent. So Valerie and I talked a bunch about like what a good deep cut recommendation would be for this one, and I think it is a little bit challenging for this one. Uh, but my recommendation, and I have recommended it before, probably for Willow and probably for the Neverending Story, is the Arizona Renaissance Festival. Or if you have a local Renaissance festival, go to the Renaissance Festival. It's I go we go every year, even though it's like literally always the same. It's always the same performers, it's always the same vendors, it's always the same everything. I still love it, and any excuse to wear a flower crown um and a long bell sleeve is a good reason. So that's my deep cut recommendation. Did you come up with one, Valerie, or do you want to go last?
No, I was gonna say my deep cut recommendation is gonna be a D&D campaign.
Heck yeah.
Mm.
Perfect. D&D campaign. Yep. Role play your fears away. Uh, what do you think, Nathan?
So my recommendation is gonna be the artwork of Brian Froud. Um,
Oh,
so yeah, he did a lot of the concept and design for both Dark Crystal and for Labyrinth. He's got a lot of like fantasy art and fairies and a lot of artwork that really kind of like you see it and you kind of like are immediately reconnected with that kind of style that was in both films. And so I say if you're not familiar with his work and you're totally into Labyrinth and Jim Henson, then it's going to be a nice little touchstone of kind of getting more of that energy and fun.
heck yeah. Excellent. Wonderful work all around. Nathan, where can people find your work? How can they support you? Are there ways in which they can give you money?
Yes, my PayPal account is no. Yeah, if they if you really need to give me money, I'm sure you can find a way to contact me personally. But yeah, Squishy Studios, if you want to check out my work, is the easiest way to do that. SquishyStudios.com has the link to all the stuff we're up to. The social medias will have the best information of like the film that we're working on right now, the last movie ever made. And so if you want to check out more of that, you can go to Last Movie Ever Made at the Facebooks and the Instagrams.
Wonderful. Valerie, are there things that people can find you on to follow you and support you?
Yeah, you can follow me, I guess. Well, I'm on all of the social medias. I'm more of a follower than a poster myself. I'm a little creeper. But like, this is Valerie V. My website is thisisvaleriev.com, and that's where you can see all of the stuff that I've produced and made, and like I'll update it with like shows that are coming up, stuff like that.
Yay. Awesome. And you can find me at the physical place of the Neighborhood Comedy Theater in downtown Mesa, Arizona, or online at Most Excellent Krissy, or at NCTPHX. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Please, in addition to like following all of us and giving Nathan money, like and follow and subscribe and all those things to the podcast. Leave us a review. It really makes a difference, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you so very, very much. Remember, when you're out there in the world, please keep the Most Excellent Podcast motto in mind. Be excellent to each other, and party on, dudes.
It's not fair.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.